This video was kindly sponsored by my supporters on Patreon. Please consider supporting me at patreon.com/John D Ruddy. Manny Man does history. The United States of America has had a long and dark history when it comes to African Americans. African people were taken to the American colonies as slaves in 1619, and they quickly became the backbone of the economy in the southern colonies, without any real monetary gain themselves. After the American Revolution, the 13 colonies of the fledgling United States grappled with the future of slavery. Many of the founding fathers were indeed slaveholders, such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. The southern states argued that slavery was the cornerstone to their economy, similar to the modern world's economic addiction to fossil fuels. Except, slaves were people, parents and traders and farmers taken from their homes. The founding fathers failed to stamp out slavery, despite all men being created equal, apparently. Many assumed that slavery would ultimately fizzle out because it wasn't profitable, but with the invention of the cotton gin allowing for much faster cotton processing, slavery kicked up a gear in the South. The early 19th century saw continuous tension between northern and southern states over the future of slavery. Some tried to send free formerly enslaved people back to Africa, some tried to compromise. Some people who had escaped slavery, such as Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, became strong advocates against slavery. All of this boiled over into the American Civil War, in which the southern states seceded from the USA to defend their states' rights to own people. At this point, there were almost 4 million people who were enslaved. During the war, US President Abraham Lincoln of the newly formed Republican Party brought in the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed slaves in rebelling states. Supporters of the Confederacy at that time were mostly Democrats. Lincoln would later push through the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, while slavery as a form of punishment continued to be legal. The Union won the war, but Lincoln was assassinated shortly after the war ended. Enslaved people all across the United States were freed. Democrats in the South did their best to make sure the whites still reigned supreme, bringing in black codes to control the newly freed African Americans. With a massive slavery-shaped gap in the Southern economy, the punishment loophole of the 13th Amendment made prisoners a new form of slave labour, and so incarceration of black men increased, a trend which continues today. The Reconstruction era in the South did see initial progress for African Americans as they gained citizenship, black men gained the right to vote, and some were even elected to Congress. In response to this, terrorist organizations such as the Ku Klux Klan were set up to intimidate and terrorize black people, reinforcing white supremacy. President Ulysses S. Grant sent in the Federal Army to enforce Reconstruction, but with the hotly contested presidential election of 1876, in which a Democrat won the popular vote but a Republican won the Electoral College, a compromise was made and the Republicans withdrew the army from the South, and Reconstruction ended before things were properly reconstructed. The South was handed back to white supremacists, who began to put roadblocks in place for black voters, including literacy tests, voter registration, and poll taxes. Literacy amongst African Americans being weak due to systemic policies preventing them from reading. These new voting policies kept out some poor white people too. Can you imagine the United States of America, champions of freedom and democracy, trying to prevent its own people from voting? For more details on voter suppression, check out this video from Knowing Better, links in the description. At this time, many African Americans left the southern states, moving elsewhere to escape the oppressive regime. To hammer the message home, white supremacists staged a coup d'etat in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1898, ousting the legitimately elected local government, who was made up of black and white representatives. Jim Crow was one of many fictional characters used to perpetuate negative stereotypes of black people. His name went to a set of laws which allowed for the segregation of black and white communities. Separate but equal, apparently. By 1900, black voters in Louisiana were reduced to 5,320 on the voter rolls, despite black people being just under half of the population of Louisiana at the time. Groups such as the United Daughters of the Confederacy began to erect statues of old Confederate soldiers and leaders from the Civil War who fought to preserve slavery. Around this time, the so-called lost cause narrative began to emerge, and the South began to reframe how the Civil War was remembered, how they were fighting for states' rights, fighting against Northern aggression, various narratives attempting to sideline slavery and the oppression of black people. One of the first ever feature-length films, Birth of a Nation, depicted the Ku Klux Klan in a heroic light, and black men as dangerous beasts, something that would permeate into pop culture for a long time. For more on this, check out Lindsay Ellis's video on the topic, link in the description. Birth of a Nation created a resurgence in the membership of the Ku Klux Klan. Organizations such as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, and the Universal Negro Improvement Association were established to help defend and demand justice for black people. After World War I, competition for jobs increased, with so many soldiers returning. At this time, millions of black people once again left the South to other urban areas in the rest of the USA, leading to more racial tension and discrimination towards black people in jobs and housing. The Red Summer of 1919 saw race riots and lynching across America. In 1921, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the District of Greenwood, the most wealthy and successful black community in the United States, was burnt to the ground by white supremacists, destroying a huge part of the economy in the black community. Segregation was so effective in suppressing black people, Nazi Germany looked to the regime for inspiration when drafting the Nuremberg laws against Jewish people. Black people tended to be housed in older, more run-down accommodation, creating ghettos. With the system rigged against them, black communities tended to fall into poverty, which had its own self-sustaining cycle, while more financially stable white people moved out of urban centres to the suburbs to escape the crime caused by poverty. Many communities in American cities today are still divided unofficially by these red lines. For more details on redlining, check out this video from ContraPoints. Links in the description. During the 1930s and 40s, many urban black people began to lean more towards the Democratic Party, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal was bringing them more opportunities. Although this didn't sway 4 gold medal winning Olympian Jesse Owens, who was snubbed by FDR. Black veterans of World Wars I and II called for an end to segregation and racial discrimination in the military. In 1948, President Harry Truman did this. This annoyed many of Truman's fellow Democrats in the South, who formed the short-lived States' Rights Democratic Party, often known as the Dixiecrats. The Democrats' hold on the South was beginning to weaken. At the same time, progress was being made for Mexican-American rights. Following in the same vein, in 1954, the NAACP won a massive legal victory in the Supreme Court, in which it was deemed unconstitutional to segregate public schools, overturning the separate but equal approach of 1896. White supremacists angrily resisted this with boycotts and abolishing public schools. While groups such as the NAACP were slowly achieving progress through the legal system, the lived experience of many black people on the ground didn't seem to be changing fast enough. The time for protest and direct action was at hand. Special thanks to Dr. Ebun Joseph and Abie Ekenezar for helping me with this project. Thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as part 2 comes out. The dreaded algorithm has been pretty tough these days, so hitting the bell icon really helps. What helps even more is supporting me on Patreon. You can support the creation of these videos on Patreon and enjoy loads of benefits. This video was indeed voted for by my patrons. You can buy my books and all sorts of other Manny Man merchandise at johndruddy.com, including this detailed poster of the timeline of Irish history. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitch and Twitter for all sorts of pictures, posts and updates. Check out my Star Trek podcast, Where Many Have Gone Before, on Spotify and Apple Music, where I react to watching Star Trek for the very first time. Thanks to all my patrons: Alexander, Arthur Revan, Carol Basil, Chair DJ, Colton Sayer, Crystal, Dav McGee, Dustin Holden, Helena Rowe Bradley, Jason Romaine, Jefferson Yates, Jesse O'Leahan, Joshua Benjamin Heisler, Judy Friesen, hi Judy, Catherine Gilks, Kythias, Lapre Shea Queenvara, M, Mario A. Gallardo, Marcus Booker, Mike Wise, Monday Rico, Mr. Magnificent, Mr. Easy Play 2, Mycroft, Myth Nguyen, Ollie Coors, Rocket Wrench, Ryan Ilano, Sean Bates, Soars, Stephanie Lenz, Tan May, Travis Dunn, Wendy Barley. Once again, thank you.